Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Stephanie Bree, I am your host, and today I'm doing probably a little longer video, we'll see. This is 25 comedies to see before you die. Now, I already wrote an article on this on my website, stephaniebree.com, that's B-R-I, just like the channel name, it's all one word. But I want to kind of revisit this. I kind of want to talk about these. Before I get into this, there's a couple of points I want to make before I get into the list. Point number one, I'm bipolar, and I have other mental health issues. I'm not going to sit here and list them all. I've been in the middle of a very deep depression the past few months. So, depression has basically robbed me of my sense of humor. So lately, I don't find anything funny. Even if I sat down and watched a movie that I used to find funny, I won't laugh at it. Or something that's supposed to be funny, I won't find it funny. Point number two, my personal tastes have changed. So some of these movies I'm going to say, when I talk about them, they may or may not be problematic. I'll point that out as I go. And finally, this is not a ranked list, so number one is not the greatest of all time or anything like that. I just numbered them so that I could keep track in my head. So we're just going to go down the list. Number one, Dumb and Dumber. This is by far Jim Carrey's greatest work. Also, I forget the other guy's name, but Jeff Daniels, I think it is. It's one of his better movies as well. So Dumb and Dumber is, at its core, it's a buddy road trip movie. Two, we'll say idiots, who go on a road trip, and comedy ensues. This is a highly recommended movie, and I can't say enough good things about it. Number two, Clerks. Now, Clerks is kind of sort of problematic because there is a kind of sort of rape scene in this movie, but not really, but yes and no. So that might trigger some people. It's a really bad joke, at the very least. A girl has sex with a dead dude. I'm not going to go into how it happens. Clerks is a workplace comedy about this guy who, let's just say he is off. It's his day off, and he gets called into work, and he's in a sour mood. He's a sourpuss. And he is basically contemplating cheating on his girlfriend for his ex-girlfriend who's supposedly getting married. This is a hilarious movie. This is one of my favorite, funniest movies of all time. I love everything Kevin Smith does. So this is definitely a movie you need to see. Number three, The Mask. Another Jim Carrey classic. This one is basically a live-action cartoon. Whether you like cartoons or not, this is a hilarious movie. Jim Carrey finds this magical mask, and when he puts it on, he's transformed into a superhero, and he does a lot of weird stuff. This is a hilarious movie. Number four, Mr. Mom. This one may or may not be problematic to some people because it was made in the early 80s, and it reinforces sexist stereotypes, outdated sexist stereotypes, but it's still a lot of fun. Basically, the man of the house, Michael Keaton, loses his job, and his wife, and I can't remember the name of the actress who plays her, she's famous, but I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. She goes to work in his stead, and he stays home and watches the kids, and it's just hilarious watching him trying to go grocery shopping, trying to change a diaper, trying to clean the house. It's just a lot of fun. Number five is Back to the Future. Now, I have to say this. Back to the Future is a movie I watched too many times because it was on TBS every Friday night, and I had it on VHS, and I didn't have a lot of movies on VHS when we were kids. We didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have a lot of movies, so I watched it a lot. So this is one of those movies that I will recommend. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it, but I'm never going to watch it again because I've seen it too many times. Number six is The Breakfast Club. This is one of those movies that gets a lot of praise. This is a John Hughes film, The Brat Pack. This has got the amazing Molly Ringwald, my very first Hollywood crush. So I definitely recommend it. It's about a bunch of misfits who get stuck in Saturday detention, and through the course of the film, they bond and become friends, and they share stories from their life and everything. And it's like a comedy, but it's also kind of a drama or a dramedy, if you will. So think Degrassi. This is kind of like an extended episode of Degrassi. And that gives you an idea of what it is. Still a good movie. Number 7, Weird Science. This is an extremely problematic movie because it is excessively sexist. Excessively sexist. But it's still fun. You know, you gotta look at it in the lens of the time. These two boys, they're nerds. They're getting bullied at school, and they use their computer. This is 1980s, so you know this is kind of sort of sci-fi. It's movie magic. They use their computer to create a sexy girl, and then she brings them to life. Basically, she takes them into the city, shows them how to party, takes them to the mall, shows them how to, you know, she buys them clothes, throws a big party at their house, and basically opens them up and preps them for their girlfriends, who are basically, they're stealing from the bullies. Anyways, highlights of this movie is Robert Downey Jr. in one of his earliest roles. This is a fun movie. Number 8, Super Troopers. The only thing I'm going to say about Super Troopers is I died laughing when I watched this movie the first time, and it cracks me up every time I watch it. It's about a bunch of goofball cops. Well, highway patrol cops. But it's hilarious. It's just fun. It's just a lot of sight gags and quick one-liners and just jokes after joke. Number 9 is American Pie. Now, I'm ace, which means I'm asexual. So American Pie is one of those movies that is uncomfortable to watch because it is overly sexual and there's a lot of nudity in this movie. But it's still a lot of fun. So the premise is basically these high school seniors are about to graduate and they're getting ready for prom, and they make a pact to all lose their virginities before prom or by prom. And they, you know, there's the dork, there's the hipster, there's the jock, there's the choir boy. You know, it's stereotypical teen movie, but it's a lot of fun. Number 10 is Rat Race. This is another movie. The first time I watched it, I died laughing. This was so hilarious. So basically, this is a movie about a group of people who are given this incentive to go on a race to New Mexico from Las Vegas. There's like $500,000 or $1 million or something, like $50,000, something like that. I think it was $50,000. I don't know. It's a big exorbitant amount of money sitting in a double bag in a locker in New Mexico, and they all, first one there gets the money, basically. And so this is an all-star cast. I'm not going to list them all because I'm not looking at IMDb right now. My memory sucks. But it does have Seth Green in it, and it does have well, that's all I can remember. Seth Green. He's one of my favorite actors, so it's a pretty good movie. I want to say Breckin Meyer, I think, is in this. Anyways, it's hilarious. This is a hilarious movie. Now, I have to point out the lead singer from Smash Mouth makes a cameo in this movie, and he just passed away, so this movie might be troubling for some people. But go ahead and give it a watch if you can get past that. Number 11, Throw Mama from the Train. So this is Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito. And the short version is Danny DeVito lives with his mom, and she's a bully. And Billy Crystal is a failed writer who teaches writing at a community college. And Danny DeVito is one of his students. And he basically hires him to murder his mother and cover up the murder. And it's a caper, basically a crime caper. It's like he kills her, but then it turns out she didn't really die. And then he spends the rest of the movie trying to kill her again. So it's pretty funny. Number 12 is Mallrats. Now, Mallrats is very dated. This movie was made in 1995, and it's about two high school kids who break up with their girlfriends, and to basically forget about their troubles, they go to the shopping mall. Now, that it's dated because that's not a thing you do anymore. Shopping malls are a thing of the past, by and large. This is another Kevin Smith movie, so there's a lot of nudity in this movie. so that might make some people uncomfortable. And it is very sexual. But this is one of those nerd movies. It's like a comic. This is a comedy for comic book nerds. The studio executives making the movie describe it as a smart Porky's. I've never seen Porky's. I'll never watch Porky's. Like I said, I'm Ace, so I don't have any interest in Porky's. That's too much for me. But I can say this. It is hilarious, and you definitely need to see it. Number 13, Can't Hardly Wait. This movie is made in the 90s, so it's a little problematic because they do say the F word, and I don't mean fuck. So there is that. And there's some other problematic stuff in this movie. But this is Jennifer Love Hewitt, and it's got Melissa Joan Hart, and it's got just a ton of actors that you recognize. There are a lot of faces you'll recognize, but you won't recognize their names. It's basically an all-star teen cast. All the teen stars of the 90s. This is it's they just graduated. This is the graduation party. They're getting drunk. They're hooking up. They're breaking up. South Korean is in this. They're breaking up. It's just a good fun movie. You definitely need to see this movie. Number 14, Mumford. Now, I'm not going to spoil Mumford. I'm just going to say this is a very funny movie, and you definitely need to watch it. It's got Jason Lee in it. You know him from Mallrats. He was the main guy from Mallrats. So this is definitely worth checking out. Now, I don't want to spoil it, so the only thing I can tell you about this movie is it's a guy who is a psychiatrist in a small town, and he just learns people's secrets and uses that against them. And that's all I'm going to say. Number 15 is Pleasantville. This one is less problematic, more along the lines of, like it makes you think. So put that in your head. This is, Pleasantville is about these two kids. They're high school kids again. Tobey Maguire and, damn it. Why don't I remember her name? I keep forgetting people's names. I know her too. She's one of my favorite actresses. She played in, damn it, I can't remember her name. Anyways, she's the girl from Legally Blonde. It'll come to me down the road. I'll remember it. Anyways, they get sucked into this TV show that's basically like a Leave It to Beaver. It's like they're watching a TV channel that's like Nick at Night. And they get stuck in the 50s, and it's whitewashed 50s. And basically they introduce emotions to people, and they introduce sexuality to people and new concepts and thinking for yourself, and people slowly start to get color. It's black and white, and they slowly start to turn in color. This sets up the racial segregation, and other stuff so it's a lot of social commentary, but it's a fun movie. Another all-star cast. My favorite actor of all time is William H. Macy, and he kills it in this movie. Number 16 is Empire Records. Now this one, I kind of wanted to take it off the list. So I wrote an article about this movie, and this is indicative of my changing tastes. The first time I watched this movie, I felt like I was robbed because I didn't see it when I was a teenager. I saw it when I was 30-something. I was like mid-30s the first time I watched this movie, and I felt like if I had seen it when I was a teenager, I would have loved it. The second time I watched this movie, I was asking myself, why did I like this? I don't get it. What's happening? I'm not into it. So I'm going to put that out there and just say, take it or leave it. Empire Records was funny for me at one point, but then after some things changed in my life, it wasn't funny for me, so it might be funny for you. Number 17, Chasing Amy. Chasing Amy is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Chasing Amy is a movie about a comic book writer, artist, guy, creator, who falls in love with a woman who's also a comic book creator, but it turns out she's a lesbian. And he spends the movie pursuing her even though she's insistent that she's a lesbian. He later finds out that she had a pre-lesbian phase in high school, and so then he uses that against her, and then she ends up terminating their friendship and turning on him, and they become enemies. But It's a very funny movie, but it's also a very serious movie, and this is one of those that it's like, it's kind of like, it is a queer movie and it's good for queers to watch, but it's also kind of got that like anti-queer messaging. So it's like it's not fully woke, but it's like waking up, if that makes sense. Next up, number 18, we have Office Space. Office Space is this hilarious movie about these dudes who work in an office and they're just bored to death with life, and it's got Jennifer Aniston and a bunch of people in it. And they're just bored to death with life, and so they're looking for an escape, and he's just desperate to find any joy in his life. And so he does a lot of funny stuff. Number 19 is Ghost World. This has Steve Buscemi, who is another one of my favorite character actors. And, God, I can't believe I'm forgetting people's names right now. Thora Birch. This has Thora Birch in it. And basically, it's a high school movie. She graduates high school. Well, she doesn't graduate high school. She finishes high school, but she's one art credit away from getting her diploma, so she has to go to summer school. And it's got Scarlett Johansson when she was a teenager, so this is like pre-Avengers Scarlett Johansson when she was a little girl. Basically, they're best friends, and basically, to put it bluntly, this is like a live-action Daria, but it's not exactly Daria, if that makes sense. So think of that. When you're watching this movie, think of Daria, and you'll understand this movie. Where are we? Number 20, we have Austin Powers. Again, this is another one that's from the 90s, and it's dated and problematic, but it's still a lot of fun. This is a secret agent. It's basically spoofing 007. It's a secret agent who's chasing after this guy named Dr. Evil, who's a crime boss. And he freezes himself in time, so they freeze the secret agent in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember if it was 60s or 70s. Anyways, they wake up in the 90s, and they just continue their war on crime against each other. This is Mike Myers, or whatever you want to call him, at his finest. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Now it has 2 sequels. You can do without the sequels, but the first movie, damn hilarious. Number 21, The Great Outdoors. There's a bajillion John Candy movies, and so to like narrow it down to one John Candy movie, and I probably picked the wrong one for most people, but this is the one from my childhood. I grew up watching this movie. This is Dan Aykroyd and John Candy. It's basically summer camp goes wrong. So it's a lot of fun. Number 22, Tommy Boy. Chris Farley and David Spade go on a road trip to save the small town factory by trying to sell their new brake pads to car parts stores, car retailers. It's just a lot of fun. This is probably Chris Farley's best work. It's probably David Spade's best work. So this is just absolutely hilarious. This is a comedy you need to see before you die. Number 23, and this probably would be number 1 on the list if I was ranking them, it's Ghostbusters. Hilarious movie, classic movie. I don't have to tell you about Ghostbusters. You've seen it. You've seen it a dozen times. You've seen it 4 dozen times. You've seen the sequels. You've played with the toys. You watched the cartoon. You read the comic books. You played the video games. You know about Ghostbusters. You still need to see this movie before you die. Number 24, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, I almost didn't put this on the list because personally, I hate this movie. But I put it on the list anyways because I recognize that it's a classic, and I was going to put 16 Candles or Pretty in Pink in its place. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I personally love Molly Ringwald more than Matthew Broderick. This movie is more iconic to people, so I figured I would go ahead and recommend Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now you should still watch 16 Candles, and you should still watch Pretty in Pink, so consider those like your honorable mentions. And number 25 is Dogma. This is another one of those Kevin Smith movies, Jay and Silent Bob, blah, blah, blah. this is funny because basically there's these two angels who come down from heaven, and they've been exiled from heaven, so they've broken a commandment or something. They've essentially sinned, and they're exiled permanently from heaven, like permanently exiled from heaven. They're fallen angels. But there's this priest who basically puts this arch in a church and says anyone who walks under this arch will automatically have their sins forgiven. So basically, the premise is if these angels walk under that arch, they'll be calling God a liar. And they'll be forgiven, and they'll get back into heaven, and the universe will explode. So these losers go on a road trip to try to stop these angels. It's just hilarious. It's it's got Alanis Morissette playing God. It's got Jane Silent Bob. It's got all the stuff you expect from a road trip movie. All the stuff you expect from a Kevin Smith movie. This movie is absolutely hilarious. All right, this video is getting too long. That's my list, so stay cool.